Does it show the comments on this
Uh-huh.
thing?
Yeah, just
Oh, there we
on the
go.
far
I
right. Yep.
just clicked the comment thing. Oh,
Mhm.
cool. Oh,
All
neat.
right,
All right.
guys. We are live with well, it's been a rough day. Bear with me, folks. Beard of Darkness book reviews. I'm so excited to be here with you, TA Bruno. How are you tonight?
I am doing good. It's fantastic to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week, exchanging beard presents.
Yes. Our beards were talking like on the same wavelength, and it had to happen.
It had to happen.
And
I
what
like that.
my green screen messes it up. I do that all the time, but I'm still
Oh,
gonna put it
no,
up.
that's my fault. I made a green cover. Well,
I think
Lance Buckley made a green cover, but he did a great job.
it's very like you look at that cover and there's questions that are evoked. Something cool's going on. Kind of my first thing that, if you want to touch on it, which I would
Sure.
absolutely been waiting and dying to hear, is give us like the overview of this book first, and maybe the
Okay.
subgenre and the whole spiel.
Sure, sure. Well, for the uninitiated, I am T.A. Bruno, a wannabe writer who's published 4 books, and people seem to like them, so that's pretty nice. I actually got them right here too. So Down Below Beyond's the newest one. It's kind of it's a standalone novel because and I'll get to the other ones in a minute. I'd written a sci-fi trilogy that was like an epic sci-fi, adventure exploratory thing with war and all that stuff, which was these 3 books called The Song of Kamaria. And these were really fun to write. I'd always been a dream of mine to write at least one sci-fi book. But for some reason, my brain was also like, well, it's not real unless it's a trilogy back then. I'm like, it has to be because, grew up with Star Wars, grew up with all the great trilogies or whatever. So I wrote those, and those are, about humanity escaping a deadly threat in the Sol system. They basically been wiped out and shoved out. And what was originally supposed to be just like an exploratory thing became a life raft. And so they go to this place called Kamaria, and we have a whole bunch of adventures there for 3 books. First book's like a colonization, exploratory first contact thing. Second book's more of like a mystery thriller, kind of like takes all the stakes and kind of makes it more personal. And then the third book's like a big war book. So I changed the genre just a little bit, which is something I kind of picked up during my career at one point. So there's that. And then, so to get back to the new one, Down Below Beyond, that was, so I had, written the 3, and the third one is really dark and really a little depressing, but like bittersweet depressing. But very, very dark and action and kind of crazy and scary a little bit. So I wanted to kind of cleanse the world. I didn't want to leave the world with just that. So I'm like, okay, I'll make a new standalone, and I also want to make a playground that I can keep playing it. Because Kamaria is cool,
Dig
but I
that.
feel like I already exhausted every story I can tell there. And there's a few more. I might dip into it with like short stories. But overall, if I want to tell something new, I needed a different sandbox to do that in. And so Down Below Beyond comes in. It's in a place called Load Space. It is technically in the same universe. Like Kamaria exists in this universe. It's a collection of worlds. There you have look at that. And I did all the art for this one, by the way.
Oh, that's so
Just a
cool.
really quick. Yeah. So the cover artist for these was Daniel Schmelling, and then the guy who did the interior art is a good friend of mine, Jason Michael Hall, and he's a guy I worked with, and that I found out he does awesome illustrations, and secretly I've always wanted to do something with him. And so when I'm like, oh hey, I could use some illustration, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to do that, and I'm like, wow, all right.
Perfect
And then I learned a
opportunity.
lot from him. Yeah. So for Down Below Beyond, I did all the interior artwork, and Lance Buckley did the cover for it.
It's
But
incredible,
anyway,
man.
so yeah, it exists in the same universe as Kamaria does. Kamaria is part of the Voyalton web, but it's like a one-way in and out, or in, or what, or out. Sorry. So it's there, but it's got more I can play with, where we got different alien races, we got different planets. They're all kind of unique in their own way. And it's about a guy who works for the Fessenog fleet trade empire, but he's kind of like really, really low on the totem pole. It's kind of like a scrap,
Go greenhorn.
guy. Exactly. He goes down to this planet, Teox, which has been harvested to death for the most part. It's basically just crap at this point. It used to be a really high-tech civilization. He picks up things that look useful, tries to sell them to the fleet, and that's kind of the end of it. But one day he finds something he was never supposed to find down there and becomes the most wanted man in load space. And so there's the tagline. So that's down below you.
So
It was fun.
I was gonna say that's you stole the words right there. It just sounds like you had so much fun. Okay, I
Oh yeah,
hear
yeah.
I'm in this new sandbox. I've got a buddy who I find out does art, so I want him in on it. I do art.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
in the thing. This just sounds like a fun project, dude.
It is. Yeah, I mostly selfishly write for myself.
I
But then
think every
I
writer
hope
should.
people like it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so far it seems like people enjoy it. And I'm very, very grateful anybody gives me any time of day whatsoever. Because yeah, for me it's a creative output. And I love doing it. And I love, it kind of gives me a reason to draw. I keep looking over it. That's why I'm like looking over here. I'm not reading off a script. I'm like, oh, there it is. Look at my little book, baby. Anyway, yeah, but no, it's super fun, and I enjoy doing it. I'm grateful that other people enjoy reading it too. So
Yeah, you got
very nice exchange.
wonderful people like Kevin at Silverstone's Books in here. Love
Yes,
Bruno's art,
yes.
character design.
Oh yeah,
Love that,
it's good to see you there.
it's cool to see them doing their physical store, man. It's so nice.
Yeah. By the way, I want to point out that is the first time I have seen my book on a physical store shelf. So thank you very, very much. That was awesome.
That's an
That
experience.
first casual picture, I'm like, oh my God, it's on a bookshelf in a store. So that was a very, it made me feel great. It still does thinking about it. So
That's a big thing. I mean, you put all this time into a book, and
mhm.
he makes these wonderful videos, right? And the occasional baby cry. I'm sorry, they're getting put to bed right
Oh
now.
no. I got two. As we mentioned off camera, I'm like, got
Yeah,
two and totally no.
appreciate that. And but yeah, I love the video, Kevin, that you do. Like you're just kind of it's beautiful. You're showing off what it's becoming, where you started. It's a
Yeah,
journey, and I love to watch it.
yeah, it's exciting, and the TikTok too. I'm like the first guy.
Yes.
I'm like, oh yeah, awesome. I'm on TikTok maybe a little too much. I don't make videos.
You know,
I just lurk there.
there's so many things to learn, right? It's like I
Exactly.
can
Yeah.
get lost just learning about the stupidest things.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
tell us about your writing journey. What kind of led up to this point? What did that look like?
Oh, sure, yeah. So, with me specifically, I had always kind of loved reading, especially when I was younger. I read all in there. Hold on, let me see if I can find it with my hand. The Redwall books were a big inspiration for me, and I read pretty much all of them way back before high school, I think. And I remember for Christmas one year, all I asked for was Redwall books, and my parents got me them, and they're like, "Is that all you want?" And I'm like, "I am very happy. I'm gonna go read now." Anyway, so I loved reading growing up, and I remember I would have even like dreams where I would be writing something, like it was a book of some sort and everything, and then I'd wake up and I'm like, ah, man, I didn't do that. You know? And as a kid, I had drawn a lot of comic books for me and my friends because I was always, I don't know, I was always able to just kind of draw. I just kind of figured it out early, and my brothers too. My brothers are very good artists as well. And by the way, I have two brothers. I don't know if anybody knows this. I'm a twin, so I have a
Oh
twin
wow,
brother and then an older brother, two older brothers too, and they're
that's
all very,
incredible.
very talented artists. Yeah, my brother actually does 2D animation. Anyway, so yeah, we always kind of were drawing stuff. So I drew a comic book in like third grade called Space Explorers. It was like me and my buddies or whatever, just doing space adventures and stuff. And some of that, oh hey, there you go.
Biblio theory in here.
Yeah,
Wonderful
yeah.
channels he's got, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I recently saw his channel. I'm like, wow, he likes everything I like. So
Yeah, dude.
therefore, hopefully, maybe he'll like my books. I don't know. Anyway, I hope he enjoys that because yeah, and as oh hey, here we go. This is great. I love
All sorts
this.
of wonderful people up in this place,
I
man.
know, yeah,
They just one
yeah.
after
Oh,
another.
some of these guys may have heard this spiel before. Yeah,
That's all
I
right.
drew this
We have.
comic book.
I think everybody over here. I see these people all the time and hear their inspirations. They are absolutely. They love this stuff just as much as
Best
we all
group.
do.
Yeah, best group ever. Oh, this is cool.
Absolutely.
So they're probably going to be bored when I go over this again.
Well,
But anyway, I drew a comic book over 20 years or so. eventually I tried a different comic book in like college,
Hmm.
and that still kind of exists, and that was called Star Siren. So then later on, I tried to make this story into like an animated short. And as I was doing that, I'm like sitting here trying to inject like all this lore into this 5 minute thing, right? And as I'm doing it, and I got pretty deep into it too, I was almost done with the thing. And then I'm like, you know what? There's more here than 5 minutes warrants. I'm like, I should just outline something. I took it very slow, like step by step, very forgiving with myself. And I'm
Good
like,
for
what if I
you.
just outline it? Yeah. And I'm like, if I outline it, I'll be happy because I have a beginning, a middle, and an end, you know? And then that's good enough for me, maybe. And maybe if I write it, that even better. And then yeah, it just kind of kept going and eventually you get in the orbit. So there you go. That's the spiel.
I have to say, I like your lots of people, including myself, that I speak with, and we have in common is as humans, we're all very self-critical, right? It sounds
Mhm.
like you're kind of forgiving to yourself, and I look up to that. You're like,
Oh, I
I'm
appreciate
going to
that.
take
Yeah.
my time a little bit with this. I'm enjoying it. So that's refreshing to hear.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I feel like it's important, to recognize, like, I think it's one thing that if you don't write the thing or don't make the thing, then no one can see it, right?
Mm.
But no one is expecting it either. So you can take your time and enjoy the process and have a good time with it. And if it doesn't ever hit the finish line, that's okay. You had fun. And you learn something about yourself or whatever you're doing. I feel like that's important. That's kind of a mantra I work with, and that was my whole thing going into it. I was like, oh, I could self-publish it, and if no one reads it, that's fine. Whatever, it's real. I can buy it and put it on my shelf. And it kind of goes that way for all of them now. It's like, okay, well, if I don't finish it, whatever. But if I do, I can buy it and put it on my shelf, and I made a thing I can look at. And that's why
Honestly,
I put art and everything, by the way, because I'm like, if you don't like the words, it's got pretty pictures in it.
honestly,
Like, so hopefully that helped.
I really, really look up to that. In fact, I think that
Oh,
that's
cool.
really cool. That I have to think about me personally because I can't speak for anybody else. But me trying to dip my hands into or dip my toes into this writing thing, I
Uh-huh.
think I take myself a little too seriously sometimes, or um, put unrealistic expectations on myself.
Ah,
Considering this is my very first time trying to do it, and I think that if you're able to regulate that a little bit, then the process
yes,
may go a little smoother, and if anything, you're going to have a little bit more fun than you would have rather than beating yourself up about it.
exactly. So two bits of advice I got from various outlets that helped a lot with stuff was I took the Neil Gaiman master class.
Oh yeah,
Our work provided it for free, so I kind of got it. That was a little nice because I know
took
it's
a
kind of
job.
expensive. But the biggest nugget I took away from that, and then I have another one after that, is that he says that, and I'm going to paraphrase this and maybe even botch it completely, but he basically says your first draft is like a grenade going off. Just write, get from start to finish, just write it. Don't care about anything that happens. Write the thing. It's like a grenade going off. Your second draft is where you pick up the pieces and see what survived. Or he also, I think he says it two ways, or maybe he was quoting somebody else when he did that or something. But he also says that the second draft is where you make it look like you knew what you were doing the whole time. So like I'm a big, that helped a lot with me because I'm like, oh, okay, it's just write the thing, because that's the hard part, right? Once you've written it, you know what the story is, because you actually might not know the story until you finish it the first time, and then you go back and you're like, oh, this is about this. It's, and I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Going
yeah,
into it.
and which when I heard that for the first time from an author, which is something I hear all the time now, I was very
Mm.
confused, and that's
Oh
just
yeah.
like I said, just I wasn't aware of that process, and that's why I'm kind of so interested to ask you that question I did about your journey because was it a difficult journey to find your process, or was it something that came? It sounds a little more natural.
It for me. It was a little more natural, I think, only because I mentioned those dreams I had earlier. I've been practicing for a while on
There you
accident.
go.
Not really. But anyway, no, it was something that like I knew kind of how I wanted to sound. and I knew what I want. The outline helped a lot. I feel like if you are unsure, an outline will kind of help with that. And I was always pretty good at my like English and literature classes, so it was kind of like I understood the assignment a little bit. But at the same time, you don't really know how to write a book till you write a book. So it was weird the first time. And I remember my first editor, that wonderful because like there were basic rules that I was not following, like because I didn't know them already. But that's what's great about your first editor is that they'll kind of do that, and then you just remember a lot of what they say. And every time you have an editor, just remember a little more every time, because like it's I there were very very basic things like just dialogue tags, how they work, and I'm like, oh wow, I probably should. And it's things that like you'll be reading a novel and before you're told to do that, you don't realize to do that, like I thought you indent every paragraph, but you don't in the beginning,
And the thing
so
is, it's so good to hear that.
Mhm.
There's so many
Oh yeah,
people
you can
that
mess it
need to
up
hear that.
totally. Yeah, and it's fine. No one, you don't get, you only, well, you kind of get graded by reviewers, right? But like, but before that, it's not done till you publish it. So you'll have if you can get an editor, if you get proofreaders, and there's a great community of people that are willing to help too. And there's also lots of services now too. Like I use Readsy for a lot of my when I hire freelancers and stuff to help me out. And then and then same with stuff like on Twitter, we have the SPSFC and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Which from there, that's actually how I found Lance Buckley, the cover artist, because I looked at the who was doing cover art for. I don't think we did it this year, but like the last 2 years, there was a cover contest, and I just looked at the top ones, and I'm like, who made these? I wonder, and maybe I should talk to them and see that. And then same with Daniel Schmeling, I found him on Readsy, and he's awesome. We still talk. He's a great guy. So it's yeah, a lot. That's I think that's my favorite thing is that, and it was important to me that not only I have fun making these things, but that everybody involved that I hire or whatever is having fun too. And then we can look back on this thing and go like, that was so fun, or I love that team. And so and when I talk to pretty much all of them still, some of them are, very busy people, so I don't bug them, but like, it's one of those, like, we had a great time. So,
I think that
yeah.
that's very cool to hear. Again,
Oh,
you hear a lot of like, again, kind of what I already said, beating yourself up. That's such a
mhm.
cool way to go about it. And I have to say, I really like your attitude. And there's already been
Oh,
comments in that kind of like, man, this guy's got a good attitude. This is going to be a good interview. So I think
oh.
it's wonderful to hear, and I'm not the only one that thinks that.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so
Oh,
that's
which
cool, man.
editors do I work with? I see that
Oh, there we go.
a question there. Recently I worked with actually Isabel on Twitter. She's Shaggy Shepherd. She does proofreading and stuff. So she was my proofreader for Down Below Beyond. And then an editor on Readsy I found was Alana Jolie Abbott. And I hope I said that right. I'm so sorry. I never actually had to say their names out loud. So I was like, we've talked mostly through text and stuff. Now that I think about it. Anyway, great people, and there's plenty of other ones too. A lot of them are you can look it up on if you're using Reezy specifically. You can look it up by like what they're good at. So like Sci-Fi specifically. Anyway, I just saw that there, and I'm like, I should definitely praise them because they rock.
No, absolutely.
And there's more too. There's a guy Gavin and stuff, but yeah, those are a little older. But yeah, great
One of
people.
the things I had a lot of trouble with when I first started this was catching those good questions. So absolutely, I appreciate that. And Timothy,
Well,
he's
anytime I can plug them,
man,
I'll
Timothy's
do my
always
best.
here. He's such a wonderful guy and a wonderful author as
Oh,
well.
there you go.
So
I like it.
when did you? Let's see. Were you younger when you started loving reading? I guess we'll start with reading first. Were you a big reader at a young age?
Yeah, well, like I said, I did the a lot of the Redwall books, and then, but I will say there was a long stretch where I didn't read like at all. So like I read voraciously growing up, like all Redwall books, and not that much sci-fi. Now that I think about it, it was more like fantasy type stuff. And then I don't know what changed. I think I was like this is going to sound like a name drop. Get ready for the name drops, guys. I was working on Guardians of the Galaxy, and I realized that like I could be listening to audiobooks because people were really big on podcasts back then, and
Yeah.
I listened to Serial and I loved it when it first came out. I think a lot of people did. But then I kind of I didn't get deeper into podcasts because part of my brain was like I could just be listening to audiobooks right now. And so that's when I started doing, and I started again with Rendezvous with Rama, and that kind of like introduced me to my love of reading and stuff. And I started with audiobooks for a little while, and then now the evolution of that is all these books on my shelves. I've pretty much read all of them. I'm a very big like don't buy it unless you've read it or listened to it.
Oh wow,
And
that's a good rule.
yeah, kind of yeah. So I fail a few times. I'm looking at my
too.
bookshelf right now. So I'm looking at it. I failed a few times, but overall, I'm pretty good about it for the most part. So yeah, I really and then sunk my teeth into a lot of these and stuff, and I was all the classic sci-fis and stuff. And nowadays, I typically on my commute to work, I'll have an audiobook going. In my spare time at home, I'll read one with my eyeballs. and
With
I think
these.
that's it. Yeah, I get about two going at the same time. Where
I
like
love that.
currently right now, I'm listening to Red Rising because I put that off for too long, and I regret it
too.
because it's awesome. And I'm reading Three Body Problem, which is
Ooh, I've
also
heard
very
that's
cool.
good.
Yeah, I'm trying to tackle the like why haven't I gotten to these yet? They're on my bookshelf. I've specifically made like this is the shelf of the things you should read now.
There you
Because
go.
before I was doing it by groups that were connected in some way, but now it's like this is your TBR shelf. You need to read these books.
That's pretty. That's good. I like
Yeah.
the commitment, and I tell you, ever since about a week ago, I started thinking about it. I've never had the chance to really talk to a sci-fi writer until recently. The last couple interviews I've done, and I've been excited to tell you what I'm about to say. And
Ooh.
that is, I found this. I knew I loved to read. I think about 4 years back is when I really started reading a lot and loving it, and found that passion to want to write as well. But even more specifically, the sci-fi genre was something I never thought I would enjoy. I just read it off. I wrote it off. Um,
Ah.
that's all I'm reading right now. So I wanted to ask you about a few.
Sure.
Verrocchio's Sun Eater series. Have you read that?
I have not, but everybody's saying such wonderful things about it. It is on my list for sure. Like
It's an
I'm
addiction.
like, this sounds like it's right up my alley. So here's the confession I have is that I'm a slow reader. So
Me
when
too.
it comes to like reading with my eyeballs, yeah, I feel like it takes for like a little bit longer than it should, mostly because so some of the things that kind of hold me back from reading faster sometimes are if I'm thinking of my own story, which I'm currently in new story mode, sometimes I'll put off reading to kind of plan more and write more.
That
Or
makes sense.
if I'm in editing mode, I won't read anything because I'm a jerk when I'm in editing mode, and I don't want to be a jerk to somebody else's novel. I want to be it to my
I
novel.
don't like this character.
Exactly. Or it's like, oh, I wouldn't word it like that. I would have worded it this way. That kind of stuff. I don't like
Makes
to do
perfect
that
sense.
to other people's books. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, if I'm in, editing mode, I kind of have to put it off and that takes like a month or two, but yeah. So I
So
forget
Christopher
what's the next.
Rocchio is somebody that you find yourself at least a little bit interested in. I like that.
Very interested.
The
Yeah.
other one that I just recently really considered, and I'm about to buy the first book like any second now, is The Expanse.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Leviathan Waits.
Right. No, wait. This hand.
I'll tell you,
Yeah.
that's
That's
pretty good
all of them.
for you're figuring this backwards, Cam.
I'm
It
yeah, I'm
took
doing
me.
I'm yeah, we did a lot of work from home over the
Now that is that
so I
the
got good at
edition
pointing at my thing. I'm sorry, what?
Is that the 10th anniversary? I like the pink.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, that
Yeah,
was nice.
I didn't get the other two, but I have read I've only read those three at the moment. So that's again on my list to like get to the rest of the series. It got hard because the show was so good, and I finished the show, and then I'm like, oh okay. But I hear that the books are different enough that they warrant a read, and they also go farther than the show because the show ends in like book 5, 6 or something, and there's like 2 or 3 more books after that. So it's worth going into. But yeah, fantastic. Those are also awesome on audiobook. The guy
Ooh.
who actually, the guy who, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but the narrator who does that inspired me to hire someone that sounds a little like that for In the Orbit of Sirens.
All
And
right.
I did. Yeah, I got that. Like, he's got a very interesting voice. I thought it's got a little bit of like, I don't know. Michael Reimer did an excellent job. I didn't tell him to do that. That's just how he sounds.
Yeah.
But when I was going, I'm like, oh, this guy sounds kind of like the guy from The Expanse.
I
I
like
love
that twang. He's got that similar twang to
yeah,
it.
he's
I
got
get you.
something.
So I forgot to tell you that also the first 2 books in the Sun Eater series are, I believe, as long as you like it, they're either free on audiobook on
Oh,
Audible, or if you have the subscription and you get like 1 credit a month,
uh,
they're free as long as you have the subscription. I don't know how that
oh,
works.
okay. They're like
Because I
part of
didn't
the
have to waste the credit on the first 2.
yeah. They're it's like that with something else I read. Yeah, where it's like part of their I don't know.
Yeah,
You're
it's
right.
like if you have the subscription, then
Whatever it
there's
is.
certain free ones. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's
Another
awesome.
one too that I found that's like that is the Murderbot series or
Oh
Murderbot Diaries,
yeah.
or yeah, by Martha
Yeah,
Wells.
I did the first one, audiobook for that, but I feel like those ones I should read with my eyes. I feel like there's
Yeah,
some books that like are better that way, you know? Because like when I did the audiobook, I'm like, I don't know, this isn't really jiving with me. I liked it, but it wasn't blowing me away. But I feel like maybe if I read it, I could have given it my own voice, and maybe that would have been better.
and they're such high
Sometimes it's like
quality
that.
little books.
Yeah, and they're like I feel like that goes for any book. Some books the audiobook enhances it. And some books maybe and it's a personal thing. I
Yeah,
think the audiobook narrators do an excellent job every time, but like sometimes I need to picture it my way or I don't know. Like a good example is Ancillary Justice. I started with the audiobook and then as I was going to, the narrator just kind of wasn't doing it for me, so I read it with my eyes, and I'm like, oh, fantastic! Like I liked it way better just reading it for myself.
I've had
And
that similar
and not
experience.
that she did a bad job or anything, but like it was just different for me. I could understand it better, I think.
Yeah, I
But
think I
yeah,
really have to be super into well, one of 2 things: either really, really into the book, or really, really into the narrator. It has to be one of
yes,
those,
yeah, I
because
agree.
there's like this ADD audiobook ADD I have. It's like I can't follow along, remember, and retain this information unless I'm deep in that bad boy. And
Yes, I
honestly, that's
agree.
how it's been for the Sun Eater series. It's one of the very well. There's been others, just not many, that I find
Mm,
myself like able to clean or take care of whatever I'm doing and still remember
yeah,
what I'm listening to,
multitask. Yeah. Yeah, I've
which
I've
is
done that a few times as well, where it's like, oh, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm in, and I can
and
do all that other stuff and still totally get it, you
there's
know.
only one way to make changing a diaper a little more fun, and that's having an audiobook playing.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah, I wanted to say, Brian D. Anderson, that's the Renegade Bars. Oh, not that one. Look at me messing up already.
oh
This
no worries.
confused me at first. I'm glad you covered
Oh
that. Some
yeah.
people may not know that,
No,
because you
I
look
knew
at this
that.
and you're like,
I
this guy just has a lot of initials and he likes to
Yeah.
put periods
I
after.
remember, I'll fully admit that when I figured that out, so with the first Expanse book, I audiobooked the whole thing up until the last chapter, and then I was just at home and I had a copy of the book. Because sometimes if I really like a book and I'm audiobooking it, I'll still buy the physical copy just because I like to look at it and go like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
No,
but I
they,
read the last chapter like for myself, and then it has the about the author at the end. It's like James S. Corey is 2 people, and I felt a little betrayed. But I'm like, what did he do? It makes
we
sense. That's
swept
why
this
it's
under the
a good book,
rug.
honestly. Yeah.
I think
It's
it's a
like,
cool little thing they're
what
doing.
looks a man
I
behind
don't.
the curtain?
It's like they must be so in sync with one another. First of all, for
Mhm.
that to happen, for you, like this chapter's a little bit different, or their prose. I mean, if I'm
Yeah,
reading
yeah,
a co-authored book, I at least tell myself I can tell the difference in the prose. I probably can't.
yeah.
It's edited well, and anyway, I don't know. I don't really know how the co-author thing works. I don't know how those 2 authors
Oh,
work
yeah.
together, but
With
I
The
don't know if I could tell the
Expanse,
difference.
Oh yeah, with the Expanse going into it, knowing it's two people writing it, you can kind of tell because it's like
Okay.
Holden. They alternate chapters, so it's like Holden for every other chapter, and then it's oh man, what's the detective's name? I don't know why I'm blanking on it. He's an awesome character. Somebody's gonna say it.
I do that
Thomas
every
Jane.
single live.
Yeah, Thomas Jane's character, that guy, is awesome, but they're very different like stories. Holden's very much like adventure, kind of trying to figure out what's going on, whereas the Miller, thank you.
Miller.
Gavin's got me.
Gavin in here.
Yeah, Miller is more straight detective, like he's going in and he's going to almost a noir, right? So Amos.
Oh, I love that.
Close. But yeah, it's awesome. It's a very cool, and it goes like that for I want to say 2 books, or maybe not. I know that they typically have at least 2 characters you're following. And I know one of them kind of gets like he's really not in the show at all, which I thought was weird because I love the character and I'm struggling.
There's always
These
one
were
of those
years
like
ago.
variables that those adaptations throw in there. It's like, man, I'd never guessed they'd have done it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think
but-
Avasarala, who's like huge in the show, is like not in the much of the books. And then when they started making the show, the writers loved that character so much they started to include her more in the books. And I thought that was awesome, where it's like, that character's performance was so good that it became a bigger thing in the books.
I can
like,
see
that's
how
awesome.
it's like if you're a writer for the show and you're like, you know what? I like this character and I'm going to
Yeah.
write that bad boy in there some more. I can see,
Oh, yeah.
that being a thing.
Yeah, very much life hands you lemons. You put it in a book.
Yeah, I like that.
For sure.
I see in here, Chris. You're never late. You're right on time every single time, man. Always right on time. Thank you for being here, brother. So who are maybe a couple or a few, however many you want, that really helped you as far as your writing style? Are there a couple authors that you can say, they probably had a lot of influence in the way that I write personally?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, actually, James S. A. Corey is a big one because the way I guess they tell, they're kind of like quicker with their sentences and stuff, and the way their voice sounds. And I get this from the audiobook version. Yeah. It kind of helped me like go, oh, okay, I like these kind of like shorter, more brutal sentences, a little more straight to the point, not too flowery. Which I like all that stuff still, but for me personally, that clicked really well.
Yeah.
So that was a big one. But then also writers like Werner Vinge, and who wrote A Fire Upon the Deep, which that one's awesome.
If that sounds awesome.
Sci-fi.
What is it?
Yeah, it's called A Fire Upon the Deep, and I literally picked it up because it has a cool name. And then the first like couple sentences in it, I'm like, wow, this is cool. I didn't look at the back. I had no idea what it was about. I went in totally blind, and I've discovered that some of my favorite books, I do that, and that's how they become my favorite book, because I have no expectation whatsoever, right? But
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so those are cool, and the way I do Aliens is a little bit like how he does them. What else do I do? I'm sorry, I'm clicking. That's probably very annoying. Let me look at my things. Yeah, a little bit of Dune in there for sure. Just the way philosophy is kind of intertwined. I will fully admit I am not nearly as good at philosophy as like Frank Herbert or anybody else. But using philosophy is something I like to do. I don't know if I display it as well as maybe I should. I'm getting better. I'm learning. But yeah, I like to involve philosophy in some way. So if you're looking for it, it's there. But you gotta look a little hard. But yeah, I would say those are my top ones for sure.
I love that. So one of the things I truly really love is the philosophy part. Is, excuse me, sci-fi has like, and this is new to me. So I kind of said that before. I never thought that I'd be into sci-fi. So what I've noticed is there's lots of philosophy and lore, more than I thought would be in sci-fi, and it's very cool. I agree with you. I think the philosophy is one of the coolest parts.
Oh yeah, and especially if it like weaves in, real world issues, but not in a way that's like too preachy. Like if it can just kind of make you think a little differently about a real world situation. I love that about sci-fi. I think it's uniquely set up for that. Yeah.
I agree with that.
And actually, what's cool is if you like fantasy a lot, I have heard from a lot of the readers that have picked up my books that it's like a gateway to sci-fi, because I write sci-fi fantasy, so it's very, like if you're into sci-fi or if you're into fantasy and you're thinking about sci-fi, my books actually are not a bad place to go because like
Right.
there are a lot of fantasy elements, and I try to heavily be upfront about the fantasy elements, of it. So it's like, sometimes, that people aren't aware of it going in there. But yeah, overall, yeah.
I love that though. I think that there's a lot of people that I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking for too many people, but there's most people who are into sci-fi probably started with. I guess I'm just saying that for me. That's my personal story. I guess I can't speak for
Yeah.
anybody else. That was me. I'm like very comfortable with fantasy.
Yeah. I like it
Finding out
when,
same with
yeah, the weirder
sci-fi.
you can get, the better. Like but there are plenty of hard sci-fi, like, and I feel like sci-fi is definitely it's on a gradient, right? When I was younger, I figured sci-fi had lasers and fantasy had swords, and that was the only difference. But but now I've noticed that there's a gradient of sci-fi where there's hard to soft sci-fi, right? Hard is something like The Expanse, where like, thrust and gravity and orbit, structure, all that stuff matters, and
Mm,
science is a very, very heavy part of it. And then there's the lighter side, which is more like fiction, like more fantasy fiction, where Star Wars, you got lightsabers, the Force, stuff like that. And it's funny when you use the gradient and you find out what you didn't expect to be on the lighter side. Like Dune is technically sci-fi fantasy. It's got sandworms, it's got people using the voice and stuff like that to command people and all that. And they use like their bodies to manipulate space-time and stuff like that. So it all works. But yeah, I do feel like that's important to, like, if you are going into sci-fi and you're like, oh, what kind of sci-fi do I like? Softer sci-fi is more fantasy. Harder sci-fi is more, military hard sci-fi.
I'm actually glad that you went over those points because until very recently, like within the last couple of weeks, that was very fuzzy to me. Um,
Yeah,
it came
it's
up one
fuzzy to
time
me
like,
still.
"Are you into hard sci-fi or soft?" And I'm like, "Bro, I don't even know what that is." Um,
Yeah, people are
Now, like
very
I said,
adamant to very much define it accurately, because I feel like I thought I understood it, and I think everybody interprets it in their own way and stuff like that. Because some people don't consider something sci-fi enough, and stuff like that. So, oh, what do we got here? Darth
so
Vader versus the
Bibliotherapy
Shrike.
says, "Yeah, you got it."
Well, the Shrike could move backwards in time.
Damn, he
So
knows
it
his
already
stuff,
knows if
man.
it beat Darth Vader or not. So I want to know. I have a feeling the Shrike would win, but I don't know.
Stupid green
This
screen.
would be such an interesting fight, though. I would like to see that.
We've got some brain turners here. There's another question I'm going to get to over here. It
Brain
just takes me a
turners.
minute because I am slow to the. Here he is, my man Christopher D. Brand. What does
Most
CA
important.
think is the most important element of a good sci-fi?
Oh, okay.
Coming
Well,
hard
the
with the
thing
question.
I like the most, because there's a very subjective question, but the thing I like the most is if surprising aliens are usually pretty fun, like where they're unique and they're fun to read. I like that, like, to bring up Werner Vinge again, and maybe there's a slight spoiler. Like I said, I went in totally blind. So in the beginning of the book, you're introduced to what you think are two characters. They have really, really weird names, and you think you're reading a fantasy book for a second. And it
The
turns
Scooby of
out,
the Dividus.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like Rick Scar or something, like they
Oh,
have super
nice.
weird names, and you're like unsure what's going on, but they're described as two different people, and you're like,
Mm.
okay, cool. And then you find out later, just to skip ahead a little bit, these are not individual people. Each one of these people is a pack of dogs that works
Whoa,
like a one person thing. And it, like, that
that's
sounds
ambitious.
super confusing. So Rick Scar is, three things, but they're shoved together. And if just the way it works, it was consistently interesting the whole time, and I love that about it. So I feel like that's a very important, really fun thing about sci-fi that it can do. But another thing I like about it is if it could just kind of put a lens on something that's going on in the real world, in a way that, again, doesn't sound too preachy, but like really makes you think about it. I think that's awesome, and I think sci-fi specifically is really good at it. Fantasy does it as well too, but it's it is a little limited sometimes with how it can approach the real world, because literally fantasy, I think, is the definition of it is like
Sure.
not the real world, right?
Yeah,
So like,
exactly.
but sci-fi can sometimes, and to bring up Werner Vinge again, I keep talking about him like
No,
I
he's
worship him,
very
but
much
he's
somebody I'm
awesome.
gonna read.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's great. The second book is actually my favorite book, and it's actually a prequel to Fire Upon the Deep. It's called The Deepness in the Sky, and that book I read in 2020. And if anybody has read that book, they know that like the bad guys in it come from a planet that suffered a horrible plague, but they liked the plague. So it's like, yeah, and
Man, he was
they're like praise the plague or whatever, and like, and some of
thank
the
God for this
topics that
plague.
comes up in that, yeah, yeah, some of the topics that comes up with it in that book are very interestingly done. And another thing I like a lot in sci-fi is visuals. So
Mm.
like if you can give me an epic, scene, or just something that I'm picturing in my head, like, oh, that's so cool, and then yeah, I'm on board.
I have to say
There's a book.
the very first sci-fi I ever read was from
Oh,
J.C.M. Byrne, and it was
oh
Wistful
yeah, yeah,
Ascending. And
yes,
what he did so well that caught me was what you just said. The
yes,
Wistful was bigger than I ever thought my mind can imagine a ship. After
oh
like
yeah,
reading
yeah.
his first book, man, I was so impressed.
And space bears are awesome.
Yeah, dude.
I really like that book. I just read it earlier, or well, I said almost earlier this year, last year, I
I was
guess,
really
because it's
like, dude, space
2024
bears.
now. Yeah, no, I
They're
really like that.
space
Actually, that's
bears.
what I did on audiobook as well. It's a very good audiobook. So
Oh,
yeah, no,
I've
cool
heard
stuff.
that.
Exactly. So there you go. And then when they go down to the planet and they're fighting like the big, I think it's a centipede if I remember correctly. Like I
Yeah,
was into that. I was like,
yeah.
this is cool. You got me on board. Here we are. And so yeah, I think that's a very important element of good sci-fi.
The
But
way I
yeah,
pictured it is like you go to like a big city, right? And
see you
you
later,
think the
pal.
mall is going to be pretty cool, but then you walk into the mall and there's like 8 floors, and there's like that's how the Wistful became in my mind. Were these
Ah,
huge because he talks about those eating places. Like I just pictured a mall. That's just what was in my head.
yeah,
And then you
yeah.
have these shops and these things you can do. It was just I didn't know that could happen in my brain. So it
Okay.
takes writers sometimes to be able to prove yourself wrong.
Yeah, yeah. That's I think one of the more powerful like thing. What I think is funny is when, so for instance, like Ender's Game, I read that when I was younger, right? And I
Mhm.
pictured the war room. I loved that book when I was younger and stuff. And when I pictured their like battle room where they do all their like fighting and stuff, or practice fighting and all that stuff, I just pictured like a white room with white blocks. Like that was it. I
Sure.
was so basic in my head. I don't know why. And then the movie comes out. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a lot cooler, I guess, than
It's
what I
like
was
well, it kind of
thinking.
just shows you that building. So I talk about this a lot, actually. Um, Most people I speak with that are authors or booktubers had this love for reading pretty early, which is different from me. I didn't find
Mhm.
that love until I was 29, and
Oh yeah.
I think that those building blocks, if you start earlier, can lead to a more grandiose imagination as an
Yes.
adult. And I think you kind of just touched on that. You remember thinking of it just kind of bland. And
Yeah. It was
now you would
functional.
never be able to think of it that way.
No, yeah. I think, well, especially now with my career as well. Like I think my brain is hardwired to do that now.
You just
So I
segued
have
so
to.
perfectly into my next question.
Oh,
So, all
that
right, we're going to,
thing.
yeah, I'm so excited, by the way. I've been waiting, guys. I
Cool.
understand that you are a previs artist. Could you
Yes.
tell us
By
what
day.
that is and how you came to know about that profession?
So, this is a funny story, and I'll try to keep it short because I think I ramble on
Keep
this
it
a
as
lot.
much as you want,
Um,
man.
yeah, so I went to school for computer animation in Chicago, and I didn't. I before as I mentioned before, I used to make comic books. I was basically trying to tell stories every way except writing a book for a long time, which it's like writing a book just was like the last logical thing. But anyway, so I was making things called machinimas, which are like you take like The Sims and you film it and then you add voiceover and stuff. And then I realized, oh, I could just animate this myself and it'd be way easier. So I learned and that's why I went to college for animation, which is probably, it was a smart move in hindsight, but man, what a fast thought I had there. So I did that, and then when I was getting out of college, I didn't really know what I was going to do because I was living in Chicago. It's not exactly Hollywood or anything like that.
No.
So you can go into like advertising mostly, which I did, and I did some TV stuff for like documentaries and stuff like that. But it was kind of like week to week, and it wasn't a thing, you know. But I knew how to animate, and I knew how to do cameras and stuff. And so one day I look up on just, I don't even think it exists anymore. Autodesk Maya is the program I'm trained in and got a degree in and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked up on their website. They had like a forum, and they're like, oh, local jobs, and you tell it where you are. And I looked up this one, and I applied, and then like a couple days later, I get this job, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we saw your demo reel, we saw your resume, we really like you, and we'd like to hire you." They interview me or whatever, did the whole thing, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to hire you for this thing called Autumn Frost," and I'm like, "Kind of sounds like a stripper's name." I'm like, "Whatever." And then my first day, they're like, "Okay, so this is the Zack Snyder Superman movie. It was Man of Steel." I didn't know that, so I'm like,
Ooh.
"Oh." And they're like, we're going to do, they hired me for previs, and I looked it up on the website for the company I worked with at the time. And I'm like, oh, it's like video game looking animation kind of thing. And so I walked into my first day on Man of Steel, not really knowing what previs was. So because I, like you, I had not heard this word before,
Yeah.
And so now hopefully everybody in this group will
It's
know this
amazing.
word. So what it is, so there's two types, right? You may have heard layout before, which is what I kind of currently do. But previs is for live action movies with big visual effects budgets. So again, Man of Steel has got a pretty big visual effects budget. What we do is we go into Autodesk Maya or whatever program. Typically it's Maya. My whole career it's been Maya, and I've been in it for like 15 years now. We go to Maya, and we have 3D models of the actors. We have 3D models from the art department of the set or the world it's going to belong in or whatever. And it is basically, we'll do a rough animation. Oh, it's spelled Previ, and then this next part's controversial. In my opinion, it's Z. Other people say it's S, but it's pre-visualization in theory. Technically it's S, but if you ask us old guard, we're probably going to say Z. Anyway, so it's pre-visualization. And so we will do a sequence in the computer that involves big budget visual effects stuff, like if it's monsters coming in or if it's explosions or lasers, all the cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
We'll put it in Maya, and we'll have accurate camera data, right? So we work with the director a lot of the time. So my first day on this thing, I had no idea what it was. I shook Zack Snyder's hand,
Dude.
And I'm like, wow, cool. All right. What are we doing, by the way?
I like what's going on here.
Yeah, and they showed it to me, and they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And then, so yeah, we're delivering sequences ahead of time with accurate camera data. And then what they do is when they go onto set and they wrangle all the cats together, because making a movie is a miracle, by the way. It's amazing it ever gets done more than once. Everybody at set knows what they're doing instead of figuring it out. And you can tell when basically every movie with visual effects in it now has previs. But when I was first starting my career, that was not exactly the case. It was invented for Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
So is it the little balls?
No, so I mean, no. You're thinking the motion capture. That's
Yes,
actually a production part. But there are some people that use motion capture in previs. So, but essentially, our objective is to get input from the director ahead of time before they have to wrangle everybody on set, so that they know what they're going to shoot. That way, they shoot it in front of a green screen, knowing how it will look afterward. Right?
Wow.
So yeah, so we'll do previs, and then they do production where they'll shoot it, and then they would give it back to us, and we'll do post-viz where we do a rough version of the effects back into it. So we'll take the green screen out, we'll put the lasers, the monster, whatever. I worked on Captain America, Winter Soldier. We put the shield in at that point, stuff like that, or like, anything that was 3D. We'll kind of rough it back in, and then they will bid it out to visual effects houses, and they'll make it look real pretty. So what stinks is, as cool as that sounds, if I were to show you it, you'd be like, oh, that's it, huh? That's what he makes his career doing. Because we have to do so many iterations so quickly that it's usually pretty rough looking. But it's not as rough as like you might be thinking. Like we've come a long way and like making it cooler. And most of the time nowadays, I think the objectives changed a little bit. It is still to make sure they can shoot it accurately on set, but it's also to show it to like a pre-screening audience, so that they really like it and they can get then the more accurate it looks, the better. So we take our time. We try to make it look cool and stuff like that. But it's cool because, like I said, we a lot of the time in my experience, it's not like this for everybody. I happen to work in the right places at the right time, I guess. But we got to work directly with the directors. You know, they'll be
Wow.
over our shoulders, going like, blah blah blah. You know, do this, and this is why we do this, or oh, I love that, or oh, change it and do this instead. What story? And then we'll get a little bit of their philosophy, right? The whole every
Yeah.
time I worked with a director, I got a little part of them was like, you know, installed here, right? So I'm like, oh, he does this because of this. And so the reason I even started writing was because as I was getting these, it's storytelling, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to figure out how to tell you a story that was visually, but I could still take that information because I know how to tell a story now, you know. And now not only that, I've gotten input from, you know, like James Gunn, no, not him, maybe bad example, but Spielberg, you
Oh
know,
my
and
God.
stuff like, yeah. So I was like, oh, how does he do a thing, or how do they do a thing, you know, and stuff like that. And so eventually it started to get to me that I'm like, maybe I could apply this to writing, and I have, and it's for the most part working.
Man.
So it's like, yeah. And so yeah, it was one of those, like, I was basically, my career is to help tell a story, and how you do that, it like, this is from a foundational element, because a lot of sometimes, you know, in this line of work, they'll be like, okay, just to use like a really really broad example, it's like Winter Soldier, right?
Mm.
There's this sequence where Captain America is driving his motorcycle out of the Triskelion, and he has to like a Quinjet kind of comes down, and it's like, hey, knock it off. Essentially, and it starts shooting at him, trying to get him to stop, right? They didn't know how that worked, right? So they're like, Bruno it up. And
That's
so
awesome.
that's what we did, you know, and
That's
we're
a
like,
phrase they
okay,
use.
well, yeah, what's
They
that?
say Bruno it up.
He actually, they
That's
did, yeah,
not,
the
dude.
Russo brothers,
There
they
could be
did
no
call it like,
higher.
add Bruno it up. Yeah,
Steven
well, actually, two
Spielberg's like,
funny
man,
things from that show. Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yeah,
you
yeah.
got
Well,
wonderful direction
Spielberg
like
was,
Bruno it up.
oh yeah, I wish that'd be great. But no, the Russo brothers did say those words. But anyway, no, what was funny about that though, all the things we didn't do were funnier, but I don't know if I'm allowed to even talk about those. But yeah, no. So we got creative input on how to do that. And that was a sequence I pretty much did on my own. My supervisor also helped a little bit towards the end of it for the actual like blowing it up thing. And then what's
Hmm.
cool is actually I got to do the post viz on that same stuff. So not only did I get to like previs it, and then I saw how they shot it, and it was like 1-to-1 with my previs, which is cool. And then I post vised it, so I got to get, you know, Chris Evans like landing with the shield and stuff like that. I'm like, hey. And what's
Man,
funny is that landing with the shield shot I saw in a video game too, with Captain America. I think it was like the Marvel, man, what was it? It was one of the 4-player ones, and it's like one of the first shots. I'm like, it's straight up my shot from the movie, but I'm like, hey, cool, all right, it worked twice. That's cool.
so
That's good previs for you, right?
I have to ask, have you had like, have you had a director who was like really maybe hard to work with? Like one was like, you know, this and that, and it's just kind of difficult to do your job?
I have had difficult
You don't have
directors
to
to
name
work
names.
with.
Was just
No, I
curious
won't.
if that happens.
I like my job. I won't name their
Yeah,
name.
yeah, don't do that.
Uh, No, yeah, we've had there have been some directors that we've worked with that really kind of. So I've noticed well, no, I won't go into that. Here's me dancing very specifically around my words. There are some directors that don't exactly know what they want, but in a way where they just want to see 1,000 different
Mm,
versions of it so they can choose one. I feel
sure.
like that's not good. That's not great directing. You know, like you shouldn't know less than me when you
True.
have a vision for a movie. I should help your vision, you know, not be the vision, you know, kind of
So
thing.
you're definitely in the
um
credits at the end of a movie. Like you could be
oh
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that's me.
Not Now, I will say not every single time, because I've been fortunate that pretty much every movie I've worked on, I'm in the credits for.
That's
But
so
that is
cool.
not the case for everybody. And I feel like nowadays it is more the case. But when I was first starting my career, it was actually a kind of crazy that I ended up in all the credits I did, because they were like, oh yeah, usually it's like, it'll be like 5 names and that's it. And it was weird, but I think times have changed, so which is good. They should. I mean, if you worked on a movie, you should get a credit. It's easy.
Honestly, it's one of the
not hard.
coolest stories ever been told on my channel, man. I appreciate you telling me a
Oh,
little bit about what you do.
well, hey, we are happy to provide.
Awesome,
It's a
man.
fun job. Yeah.
That's so
Nowadays,
cool.
I see here. Working.
Yeah,
in
he
visual
says,
art.
working in visual art, do you find it challenging to translate scenery to prose?
No, I do feel like that is one thing that has helped me. I will admit that I probably don't write it as best as I can, but visualizing it and trying to get it out is something that I got for free just
Mm.
because it's part of what I do for a living. So I feel confident in that part of my writing. Do I feel confident in every part of my writing? No. But that is maybe one of the 4 things that I'm like, I can look at that and go, okay, I feel good about that, like right out the gate. So
So you're a
yeah, that
human.
one. I'm here. Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think with the book I'm planning on writing now, I'm actually like trying to go back to like just educating myself more to try and make my craft better even. And so because yeah, I feel like there's always room for improvement. I do with my career too.
That's a
Yeah.
and that's a great mind space to be. Okay, sorry, I think that's a great mind space to be. I think that only can bring you farther into where you want to go as an
Mm.
individual. He also has another wonderful question, so I'm gonna throw it
Mm.
up there. So dialogue is harder for you.
Maybe, yeah. I would say between the two, yes. Because one thing I feel like is that I don't do enough to differentiate my voices too much. Like I feel like I could do that better. So I'm working on it. I'm trying to make it better. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's because that's you have ideas and you want to get them out and stuff, but sometimes you accidentally Joss Whedoned it up, where it's like everybody kind of sounds the same. So I feel like that's something I can improve. And yeah,
Wow.
and yeah,
And
comes
and,
with
and I
I
think
like that.
I think that that's wonderful too, because I always say this after something like that is said. It's like that is the most human part of. That's why I like to do these lives. It's like
Mhm.
there's people asking questions, and there's a realness to the answers, and it's very human.
Oh
That's the only
yeah,
way I know how to explain it, and I love that. Thank you for sharing all those little tidbits.
no problem. Yeah.
So, what are you working on currently, and what's kind of next for you?
So at the moment, I am outlining still, but I've done a bunch of artwork and stuff. This time, I'm kind of like trying to with Down Below Beyond. I wrote it because I love the idea and everything, and I kind of knew the process after writing 4 books and everything. So I kind of went into it with everything I knew. This one, I'm trying to kind of go back and like, okay, I want to take this from the ground up and take a little bit more time with it. Like I really love Down Below Beyond and everything I did there, and it definitely gave me my sandbox I wanted to, and I
That's
told the
awesome.
story I wanted to tell there too. This time, I'm telling a story I have not really told before. So it's kind of I'm trying to like take myself out of my comfort zone a little bit, and make it so that this thing is going to be more about definitely the characters first. When you ask questions about work in progresses, by the way, I feel like maybe I'm not the only one. It's so like up in the air that I'm going to stumble over my words and just sound like
That's
I'm
very
rambling.
common from
But
what I hear.
this new thing is going to be more. It's in load space again. It's going to take place before Down Below Beyond, but not really connected to it at all. I want these all to be standalones. Like I
Okay.
want people to. These are like I made my trilogy. That was awesome. Great experience. Loved it. But I also want people to be able to just jump in wherever
Accessible.
they want. Exactly. Yeah. So like Down Below Beyond by itself, you can read that on its own. The only reason I say it's before that is because the things that happen in Down Below Beyond kind of change how load space works entirely.
Okay.
So this would take place before that change happens. That's all.
So
But it's about like a crew of. It's actually based on me and my friends did a TTRPG. If I have any fellow nerds in the audience that know what that is, basically
I'm an
Dungeons and Dragons.
aspiring TTRPG player.
Oh, there you go.
I'm
One of
going to
these
be
days.
learning soon on actual live.
Oh, There we go. One of these days, I would love to get a group together and do a live, like with
Dude,
authors and stuff, and like bloggers and everything. That'd be so cool.
I'm going to be talking
But
to you very soon.
I am so shy about it. Anyway, we did one called Teens in Space, which is very trope heavy, kind of like, you're a bunch of teenagers, and they have a bunch of different setups for it, but we kind of took it our own way with it, where we were kind of like a space Uber. So this did start with that as like the nugget of inspiration for it. But I did notice that as I was drawing the characters and adapting it into something that would work as a load space novel, I kind of changed it almost entirely at this point. But still, it gave me a foundation to work with. And this one is kind of, the setup is right. It's kind of a space Uber type thing, but it's like a kind of a luxury space liner type thing. Not exactly a yacht, and not exactly a cruise ship or anything like that, but something that's kind of its own beast. And it basically, the crew is like the crappiest in the company, and they're kind of struggling to keep the ship for themselves. So they're kind of desperate for good fare, and they're going to pick up somebody who's, they think is going to be their win, but it's actually going to lead to a whole lot of trouble.
I'm so excited.
Yeah,
That
and
sounds
it's got all
incredible.
I'm bringing an Orkney into it, which are the aliens from Song of Kamaria. So there's one of those in it, and then a bunch of the other stuff I introduced in Down Below Beyond's in it, but like in a way that you don't need to read that book, And then what you call it, you're young, yeah. So it'll be fun. I'm enjoying the outline is coming along really well. Like I feel like it's fun to play with these characters. Like the main character is she's even a step lower than what they are at first. She's like a taxi driver from, like, she'll take them from the Voyalton web that's up in space down to the city. She's so a little bit of that, and then she gets hired to work on this ship of desperate idiots, essentially. But she lied on her resume, so she's not going to help that much at first. But maybe she'll grow into the role and stuff. But yeah,
Usman from Bards and Books dropped in. Thank you, brother. Dude, I always like to
awesome.
see you, man. I love your channel. Of course, you know that. I always love when you pop in here. Always on time. He's another one.
Yeah,
People are like, "Oh, I'm here late." It's like, no, you're right there. Perfect.
yeah,
Thank you
always
for
on
being
time.
here, brother. So I
That's
do
awesome.
a podcast with some fellow authors, and
Mm,
so DB Rook, David T. List, and Tom Bookbeard, and I are the four
another
beardsmen
beard.
of the Bookpocalypse. That's what we call ourselves.
Oh, ho,
And one of our things is talking about TTRPGs. All of them are well versed. I have no clue. I haven't ever dove in, whatever the proper word is, and I'm very anxious to. So we're going to be doing a lot of like learning, and I'm going to be doing a lot of learning. They're going to be doing a lot of teaching. Man, would you be interested in doing something like that with us in the future?
Oh, yeah. If you guys can figure it out, I'm interested. So tap me.
All right.
I'll admit I'm a little like, so I've been fortunate that the friends I play with kind of guide me through it, because I'm pretty bad. I like to kind of spin it and like go, story wise, and then
Sure.
that's why it worked into the novel and everything. But yeah, I'm still like, I think finding a group to play it with and do like lives and stuff would be super fun. So yeah, let me know. We'll see what
Yeah, dude.
happens.
So yeah,
Yeah.
they've got the ideas going. I've been busy with the kids, and they've kind of been working on the details. So I'll let you know, man. That's
Cool.
so cool.
Awesome.
So I love hearing about. So I'll have to say, your first trilogy, I have
Mm,
seen the covers like a million
Mr.
times,
Daniel.
and it was a couple weeks ago when I was like, I've seen those covers a million times.
Ooh,
I just didn't
indeed.
put two and two
Oh.
together. Yes, that font.
and
I love
and
that font, and
Mr.
it's
Oh,
very striking.
yeah. You know what I told Daniel? I learned this at work. I'm like, I want big, important letters. And
They
that's
are.
the only way I knew how to describe them. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he put that on there. I'm like, nailed it. Yeah, they're big and important looking.
Jim McCleary says, so Bruno, what are your favorite types of books to read?
Oh, definitely sci-fi. I think that's the easy one. And again, sci-fi fantasy, I think, is where I kind of live, and I read, and I'm looking around my just kind of I kind of mentioned a few earlier where it's like Fire Upon the Deep and A Deepness in the Sky. So Vern of Ringe is a big one. I also like This Is How You Lose the Time War, which is just cool. And that's a great audiobook, by the way, if anyone's looking into that one.
I've got some
I
good
read a lot of,
recommendations.
oh yeah, a lot of Becky Chambers as well. I like her a lot. And Ancillary Justice I liked. I could just
That's
like
another
list.
one, Ancillary Justice. I feel like I've heard that
Yeah,
before, but maybe
it's
I
a good one.
haven't.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty good one. Oh, and you know what I just read recently was Roadside Picnic,
Ooh,
which is an older one. That was cool. And I actually got the very fancy edition from what is it, the Folio Society?
ooh,
They had
anything
I
from
got that
them.
for Christmas. So I was like, ooh.
That's a
Oh, I
proper
like
Christmas.
Neuromancer a lot too. That was good
Ooh,
too. That one had to read with my eyes because the audiobook, the way he writes is very brutal and like fast and noiry. So it's a hard to start, but then like if you let it meld with you, then you start to really like that one.
gotta
I
digest those
have not
themes.
read. Yeah, I see the question down there. I have not read the Warhammer books, but my brother has, and he recommends them all the time. So I think you got to pull that trigger at some point.
And I've heard the same. Like I hear that guy's name all the time, and eventually I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to be like, you know what? I've succumbed to the abnet of
yeah.
Warhammer, and I
Well,
have to
see,
just
I
read.
was a StarCraft fan for a while, which is kind of not nice because StarCraft is kind of a ripoff of Warhammer. I'll fully admit that. But like, so yeah, but I kind of grew up playing StarCraft. So then when my brother got into Warhammer, he did the miniatures and everything for a little while. I didn't believe him when he's like, because I'm like, oh, that's the ripoff. I'm like, no, it's not the ripoff.
It's like now mine's real.
So now I'm reprogramming myself to actually look at. We've been more of the video games are coming out too, so that kind of makes it easy to like step into that world a little bit.
What kind of video
But
games you
yeah.
play?
Oh, I play video games. So I before I was a writer and a previs artist, I was the game guy at Best Buy, and I worked at a
Yes,
GameStop. So I play video games. But what am I playing right now?
I'm still on Elden Ring.
Oh, I beat that on 2 systems.
Oh my gosh,
I'm a
I don't know
double
how.
Elden Lord. You're looking at a double Elden Lord. I beat it on
I
a
respect
what
the game, dude. You've got it going on.
I appreciate that. It was hard to do twice.
It's very hard.
No, I played it when it first came out. I played it with my brother on Xbox.
Mhm.
But my friends all had. I didn't have a PlayStation 5 at the time. But I did have the Xbox, and so did my brother. And then we both eventually got PlayStation 5s, and they
That's what
all
I
played
got.
it on that. So then I'm like, okay, well, I know the DLC's coming out, and my brother doesn't really play it anymore. He just had a kid too, so there's no way he's going to be able to play it. So I'm like, maybe I'll buy it for PlayStation. They can help me through it, and so we did that. And yeah, we so there we are. Sorry, now I'm a double Elden Lord.
My wife
And
probably has so many stories of me getting so mad. There's those
oh,
certain bosses that just they just
oh
kill
yeah,
you every single time, and then there's like that one lucky time out of like
oh.
500.
So funny story. Before Elden Ring came out, I was, and like I said, I played that one first with my brother, right? But he
Mhm.
had not really beaten any of the Souls games. I have currently beaten pretty much all of
Mm,
them. I haven't beaten kind of the more offshooty ones like Sekiro. I won't.
that's a
That one's
title.
too hard. Yeah, it's a hard one. But anyway, but I had beaten Dark Souls in the past and I loved it. He had never beaten it, so I'm like, okay, well, let's play it together and maybe we'll beat it before Elden Ring comes out. And we did that. But what happens when you beat Dark Souls is that so I'm like, okay, he hasn't beaten it, so we'll beat his boss first. And then I'll just figure it out after that. Because I'm like, if I got this far, I'm not going to not beat it again. Right. And
Yeah.
so we beat the final boss. And between the two of us, it was hard, but it wasn't impossible. Right. But now I don't have my brother to help me because it takes your character basically New Game Pluses him.
Uh,
So he can't just like help me out. And I'm like, you left me. Anyway, what is awesome though is that I had a hell of a time trying to beat that final boss on my own because no one was playing it, right? Everybody's
yeah.
waiting for Elden Ring to come out. And if I would get a guy, it would take forever and then we'd die somehow or something would happen,
You
So I
got the
kept
guy
doing
that
it and
thought
I
it
got
was new.
yeah, I got really good at parrying and stuff. And then it literally 4 minutes before Elden Ring became playable at midnight or 10 o'clock or whatever it was at that night. I beat it. And I did it with like pairing. I did it on my own. I'm like, yes! It was my
What
most
really makes
gratifying
me
moment
sick?
in gaming ever.
I go on like YouTube and watch these people who are like no armor, no nothing.
Oh yeah, the speed runs.
I puke. I'm like, you
Yeah.
disgust me. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm worse because I'll watch it and go, oh yeah, they make it look easy, and then I'll boot it back up, and they're like, oh, it's not. Oh crap!
I can't believe that there's an option to play that game where you can't die. Like you can try to, and people do it.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just baffles me. Maybe I just really suck, which is probably it.
No,
but I still
you're
enjoy
fine.
it.
They're inhuman. They're
it's a lot of time
too much. Yeah, they're good at that.
So
anyways, that's what I'm playing. Yeah,
I love that, man. So we have a lot in common as far as that. I haven't played in a little while just because, well, there's lots of kids here. But when I do finally get back to playing, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So where are you socially frequent? Like your social medias, and then let everybody know where your books can be bought.
Oh, sure. Well, you can get my books at Silverstone Books. They're all on that, which is great. They're also on, kind of where normal books are sold too, or Amazon, Barnes and Noble, a bunch of ones I haven't looked into in a while. I forget what they're called. But yeah, so that, and again, T.A. Bruno, you look that up, or if you want, there's the Song of Kamaria. All of them are also available on like Kindle Unlimited and on Audible. And I got to say, the guy who did, I liked all my audiobook narrators. The guy who did Down Below Beyond, he like when I got him, it was one of those. As soon as I was hearing the auditions, I hired him immediately. I didn't even care how much it cost, and luckily he was within my budget. But like I was like, I need him to do it. And Kyle Snyder's his name. He kicked butt. So I highly recommend that if you got anybody's looking for a new audiobook. Kyle Snyder.
So I write with Fan-Fi Addicts and reviews and stuff. And he was doing like your audiobook thing, and I just like totally I want to win that. And it's amazing, guys. It's so good. He's not lying. This guy is amazing.
Yeah, he's
the voice,
and it's funny. I had almost like no notes for him too, because like usually you listen to it, like, oh, this word's mispronounced, or oh, let's try this line again, or something like that. With him, I was like, dude, you're just nailing it. Like I was impressed the whole time, and it made it very easy, very cool. And somebody mentioned how green the cover is. And like,
yes,
right here.
Usman, that's
very
my
cool.
guy, man. He's reiterating what I said at the beginning, and I love that.
There you go.
It just shows you how many people love that color and what you're doing with that cover.
Yeah. So this is Lance Buckley did this, and what is cool is I told him basically my notes were like, oh, I want it to be, this guy's going to go on an adventure. He's out of his element. I'm thinking a little bit like the Last Starfighter kind of vibe for a cover. It doesn't mean the book is necessarily going to be like that, but like that, if you remember that Last Starfighter poster, it's him standing in his like normal clothes, but he's got like a space suit kind of like in his arms, and he's looking up, very like I'm about to go on an adventure I'm not fully prepared for kind of thing. And I told him I want a very striking color. I'm like something you don't see very often. And I was thinking he was going to go with, I don't know, yellow or something. But then I see this green cover, and I'm like, oh, it's so cool.
What is it, like
and I was just as shocked as everybody else when it came out. I'm like, oh, that is it. So
is it like would you call that emerald green?
Oh yeah, probably. Probably
some sort of really cool green.
Yeah, deep green, maybe even forest green. I don't know. I'm bad at that though.
Yeah, well, there's
I think I'd be better at that. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
I was just saying, there's great variation of green.
Oh yeah, and yellow. Man. And I like the little light tricks he's done on here. If you get it like a really close up,
yes,
you can see like he kind of V's the light. I don't know how to call it. He's smarter than me. He's a good guy.
It looks like there's a bunch of light being put down on him. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, great stuff. And then, if you want to find me on social media, I'm T.A. Bruno author, basically anywhere. Mostly kind of on Twitter, as long as it doesn't go crazy, because it's been very unstable. But I
do have all those in the description.
Yeah, Instagram's another one. I like to share pictures of just books I've read and stuff on Instagram as well. So if you're just, I'm like almost a book blogger, but I haven't fully pulled that trigger to like be consistent with it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah, and I have a Facebook group too if anyone's interested, but I don't. I gotta admit, I kind of neglect it.
Man,
So
Facebook's
yeah.
done so many people dirty. They done me dirty. I said
Oh,
somebody hacked
it's
my
old.
account. Oh,
Oh, that sucks. No, I haven't
it
had
does.
that. So it
Yeah,
just to me, it's like old and it doesn't really generate anything. You know, it's like a lot of
yeah.
effort and doesn't
It
really
is.
give me much back. But
Totally
yeah,
agree with
no,
you.
overall, yeah, that and then talking with fine people like you, I
Yeah.
prefer it this way.
It's so much fun, dude. Just I always tell
It is.
people, just so my people that I ask to be on my show know this. I would never ask somebody once that I wouldn't ask 15 times. So I'll definitely be asking you again to come talk
Ah,
because I've loved this
hey,
conversation.
anytime. Yeah, I love doing these. So yeah, anytime, and and it's been super fun, and I'm glad I'm glad I got to flaunt that I've beaten Elden Ring twice. I haven't been able to do that live yet, so that's great.
Man, absolutely. I totally dig that.
I bet my wife's
Um,
in the other room, like, oh, right, Elden. Is that what this whole
this
thing was about?
this guy and his whole Elden Ring thing.
She had to sit there and watch me. Yeah, just like you described, where it's like,
Yeah, those
like beat
angry
my head
moments.
against a wall.
um, so good. I'll have all the links and stuff in the description, guys. Of course, his socials, where to get his books, all that fun stuff. Well, I like to ask this question. I love the
Sure.
answers. Even somebody I've already talked to, I want the answer that comes to your mind. Who's a few people you'd ask me, or that you would like to see me chat with in the future?
Oh, okay. Well, in my it's like my book bro, Jonathan
Do it.
Navarre.
All
He's
right.
I hope I'm saying again, that's another name I haven't had to say out loud, I think. Usually I'm typing all these names. But yeah, he's awesome, and I think you'll have a good conversation with him. Peter Hartog too. He does or sorry, Jonathan Navarre does he's in the Wind Tide trilogy, sci-fi stuff. And he's also doing the Agent Renault Spy-Fi, which is very cool. If you like James Bond kind of stuff in space, they're very fun.
Mm,
I read the first one. I have the second one on my shelf over there.
that sounds
So I
fun.
hope to read that soon. Oh yeah, they're super fun, and he does a good job. It's funny because like his book journey and my book journey were pretty similar, where we both started with a big, expansive trilogy, and then right afterward, and we didn't coordinate this or anything. Right after, we're like, okay, smaller, standalone thing with a bunch more aliens in it, and it's like. Once I heard he was doing that, I'm like, dude, yeah, we were like DMing each other and stuff. We're like, oh yeah, here's mine, and he's like, oh, here's it. And
That's
yeah, so
so good to have
we're good
people like
buddies.
that, like in the same
Yeah,
mind
he's a
frame
great
as
guy.
you.
Great guy. Oh yeah, yeah. And we like we'll show each other our covers in advance and stuff like, oh, that's awesome, man. So great guy. I highly recommend him. Peter Hartog as well is a great guy. He did the Empire City Guardians, the Guardians of Empire City duet. They're like noir urban fantasy. They're awesome. And the audiobooks for that are awesome as well. And it's funny because I use the voice from those audiobooks for other books I've read because it was just such a good voice, like and whenever I have like a grizzled detective, I'm thinking like that.
I thought I was the
And
only one that did that.
oh no.
I think in accents, like an
Yes,
English
yeah.
accent or a British accent or Australian accent.
Oh yeah.
It just depends on the character, really.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. Yeah. And there's people I've worked with that I'll use their accent.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
there's a guy specifically Texas John that
Texas John. He
he had
sounds
I
fun.
felt bad because he's a great guy too. I felt bad because he's got such a great accent. It's infectious. And for a little bit, I'm like, I am not trying to make fun of you. Your voice is that cool. Like that.
Yeah,
Like I'm doing it on accident. I am so sorry.
I totally get it.
Because he just had such a good and he laughed. He thought that was hilarious. But yeah, no, those would be my those guys are awesome. And there's a lot more too. I'm maybe I'll email you after this or something.
There you go. If you ever think of one,
Because
shoot it
I
to me.
feel like I'm not thinking fast enough.
No. I'm always looking for, man. I like to talk to editors, illustrators. So if you ever have a random thought, send it to
Oh
me.
yeah.
But
There you
so
go.
man, I just like to say this has been so much fun. I've been looking forward to it, and man, you didn't let me down. This has been an amazing conversation. So,
Oh
man, just
yeah.
thank you for letting me borrow you. I know you got a family, so you're a busy guy. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time on my channel, and also the guys and gals that were live with us, asking wonderful questions and hanging out with us, and also
Yeah.
those in the future that we'll watch because there'll be a lot of those too. Um,
There you go.
so until next time, guys, I We just appreciate you being here, and we will see you next time. And thank you again, TA Bruno.
Thank you, guys. This was so fun. I had such a great time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. See you guys later.
Good night.